Welcome, everybody, to Wellness Today. I'm your host, Tracey Gonzalez. I'm a licensed clinical social worker in the greater Danbury area, and I just want to say hello to everybody. Welcome to our show. Today, we're going to continue with a friend of mine, Erica Wilcox. She was here last week. She is a certified EMDR practitioner. Also, she's certified in perinatal mental health. But today, as well as last week, we're going to focus on the EMDR. Today's part 2, so get ready, put on your thinking caps here because we have a wealth of information to share with you. Welcome, Erica. Welcome back to our show.
Hi, thanks for having me back.
So glad that you're here.
Great.
You know, I'm looking forward to hearing more on EMDR, and I have some questions stirring up in my mind. So if you could just remind me, you know, what EMDR stands for, and just give us a little overview.
Absolutely. EMDR stands for eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing. And
You're good.
Really what that is in a nutshell is it is a comprehensive, highly researched, highly effective form of therapy that taps into the brain and the body's natural ability to move towards wellness and healing, to identify experiences that they've had that may be causing problems in the present and move them to another area of the brain to allow them to become less disturbing to them so they can get back to their lives.
Right, very good. And as you told us last week, EMDR is very helpful for all age groups.
Right, all age groups and a whole host of problems or issues. It originally started really focused on just post-traumatic stress disorder, highly effective for that, but also has expanded to the treatment of generalized anxiety, phobias, performance enhancement for sports or actors, for example.
Nice.
Depression, addictions, eating disorder. It really has become an integrative approach for psychotherapy.
Very nice. And also, can you remind us about the eye movements? Today we want to talk a little bit about like what happens in a session, but before we go there, just give us a brief overview about the eye movements and the reprocessing, just so that we have a good foundation.
Happy
before
to
we jump in.
So the eye movements really are just a portion of the treatment. And what the eye movements are, is what it's doing is simulating the same type of eye movements that people experience in a deep sleep state, known as REM, rapid eye movement. We have that when we're in a deep sleep state. And during REM sleep, that is like the digestive system for the brain, where we take information and experiences from the day, we keep what nourishes us, and we discard the rest. When something disturbing happens, when something traumatic happens, this could be something as big as an assault or a terrorist attack, an accident, or something such as being made fun of or feeling isolated or ignored, that information can get stuck in that processing system. And that's kind of like a piece of gum in your stomach. You know, they say if you have a piece of gum, it stays there, right?
Forever.
Right. So the eye movements really are a form of bilateral stimulation. So bilateral meaning we have two hemispheres of the brain. Disturbing material can get stuck like that gum in the right side of our brain. And we're going to use bilateral stimulation, so that can be eye movements, like in REM sleep. That can be through tactile. Sometimes people have these things called TheraTappers, where you hold these little pods and it vibrates in your hand. That can be through sound, through headphones. And that takes that information stuck on the right, moves it to the left, so it's less disturbing. You create some distance from it, and you can move on with your life and have a more positive, adaptive association with that experience.
Very nice, very good. That was good. Gave me a because you know.
It sounds intimidating at first.
Yes, but when you really break it down like that, it sounds really good. So let's take us into a window into an EMDR session. I know that there's the 8 phases. Just take us there.
Yeah. So EMDR follows an 8-phase protocol,
Okay.
and there's different specializations in terms of if you're working with addiction or you're working with depression or specifically trauma. Sometimes those 8 phases may look a little bit different, but at its core, we have 8 phases. And the first is getting a history. I want to get a thorough history of the client, knowing that if they've experienced something traumatic, if it's just one time, or if they have a history of experiencing some traumatic things. So we get a history, and then we also start to prepare that person for EMDR. So making sure that they're a good candidate, and making sure that they have the skills and the tools and the supports necessary to go through this form of treatment. So it's not for everybody, but for ones that are good candidates, it's highly, highly effective.
So for our viewers that are wondering, wow, this sounds great.
Right.
You know, this really sounds like it's something that I may want to look into. What are, you know, kind of like in a nutshell, what are some things that they need to know? What's some information that they could use to help them to figure out whether or not they are a good candidate? You're talking about skills. Like what are you talking about?
Right.
Like
So you don't have to come in with skills. That's part of the process too, is prepare. If you do, then you're a head start.
Right.
And that's great. But not everybody comes in with skills. And by skills, I mean having an ability to tolerate a certain intensity of emotions, having an ability to sustain what we call dual awareness. So being able to be present and safe and centered in the now, but also be able to work through the things from the past that were disturbing. So not getting kind of sucked back in there. So if you were to ask someone, tell me about this horrible thing that happened to you, without some preparation to that, them just talking about it, that could re-traumatize them. They could have flashbacks. That could do more harm than good. And so we're in the business of helping people. And I want to make sure, I work really, really closely with my clients to make sure that there's a level of trust within the therapeutic relationship, that I have a really thorough knowledge about their history, and then starting to get into building some skills to prep for EMDR. Okay. I use the analogy of so I explained a little bit what the eye movement part is, but the desensitization part, that's the tough part. That's the toughest part for people. Okay. Because you're working on specific memories. So if doing that part is like flooring it through a dark tunnel on the highway, the preparation, we're first going to get really familiar with what the car is like. We're going to get your seat settings. We're going to check the mirror. We're going to make sure everything's set up. We're going to back out of the driveway, and we're going to go around the block a few times to make sure that you feel comfortable as possible, and knowing that the client is always in control. That's one of the biggest parts of it. The client's always in control, and a properly trained EMDR therapist is going to be working really closely with them to assess that they're going in the right direction and they have the support that they need.
Okay. No, that's good, because if someone is kind of like doing an inventory of themselves and trying to figure out, okay, is this good for me? They may think that they can do this.
Right.
But has there ever been a time when you, as the professional, realize, wait a minute, I'm not sure if they're ready? Does that ever happen?
That happens, absolutely. Okay. Right. So a couple of things may be happening. Perhaps they have a lot of work deadlines going on, and there's a tremendous amount of stress at work, and they need to attend to that. Maybe they're right in the middle of going through another big life change, a divorce or a separation, and maybe they have some serious medical issues that they need to attend. So you have to put out the fire before you rewire the house.
Right.
And so we may spend some time working on just getting stabilized in the present to do the EMDR at a later time. So that first phase in the 8 is the history taking, but then you have the preparation. So preparation for some of my clients takes 2 or 3 sessions. For
Okay.
others, it may take 2 or 3 months. It really all depends where they're at.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So after we have the preparation phase, what's next? What comes after that?
So from that, then we're going to develop a treatment plan. So we're going to assess and identify what the present issues are, how those are connected to past unresolved experiences, and then think about creating a future template. So EMDR works in all 3 tenses. What's the problem now?
Right.
How's it connected to the past? We clear up the past stuff, go back to the present, and then how would I like to handle this in the future? So, real life example, somebody is in a car accident, and perhaps the present symptoms are they're having extreme anxiety when they're driving. They can't drive on the highway. Every time they see a big truck, they have a panic attack and freeze. So those are the present symptoms. We'd connect those to past experience, which for this person was the accident, right? And we do some work around that. And then we want to plan, okay, so it has less of an impact on the present, but now how do you want to be able to handle when you're driving on that same highway, or when you see another big truck, or when you're going, when you're driving on a big highway? And so we work with the past, present, and future. We cover all the bases.
So all of that is decided within the treatment plan.
Right.
Perfect.
Right.
Okay.
So we have the setup for that. And like say my clients, like we're all kind of set up. We have all the key players. And then once we decide what memories to work on. So we start with the past. So we have the history. We've done some preparation work. We have a treatment plan. And now we're going to assess, we're going to get a snapshot of that memory, wherever the client wants to start. So usually we start with either the earliest memory, the worst memory, or what we call a touchstone memory, something that kind of kick-started everything. Sometimes the earliest and the touchstone and the worst can all be the same thing.
Right.
But really, again, another example of the client's always in control of where they want to start with that.
Okay.
So once we identify that memory to begin with, we get a snapshot of it. And I'll ask the client, tell me what is, when you think about that experience, what is the worst part of it? What is an image that represents the worst part of it? So if you were to think of that and just take a Polaroid picture of, oh, this is the worst, what would that look like? And so the client will describe, I saw the truck coming at me. This is like kind of blazoned in my mind. And then I'll ask, when you think about that now, where do you feel it in your body? Because the body remembers what the mind forgets.
Right.
And it's stored in our body. So where do you feel it in your body? I feel it in my gut. Okay. What emotions come up for you when you think about that now? Oh, I feel like I'm gonna die. I feel paralyzed. I'm terrified. Okay. And what is a negative belief that you're having about yourself? And this is really a key part of it. It's identifying the negative belief, the irrational negative belief that someone is having about themselves now with regards to that then. So it may be, I'm going to die. When I think about it now, when I think of that image, when I think of the emotions and where I feel in my body, I feel like I'm going to die. Okay. And then we start doing sets with that.
I see.
Right? So it brings the sensations, the thoughts, the images. So we're working not just with words, we're kind of on a physiological level. And then we start the desensitization. So you move into the second phase, or the next phase of that, the desensitization.
Okay, before you go there.
Yeah.
Okay, so you used the word sets. Could you tell us what you mean by that? Tell us a little bit about that.
So
yes,
a set, so for me, I use the eye movements. I feel that I get the best results with that. But other EMDR clinicians, again, may use tactile or auditory. So a set it's for a short period of time and includes the bilateral stimulation. So a set would be somebody, I would say again, bring up the image where you feel it in your body, the negative belief, I'm going to die, and then you'd follow my fingers through your field of vision, and depending on which phase we're in, I'm either going to go really fast or I'm going to go slow. If we're working on desensitizing, we're going to go fast. Again, we're flooring it through the dark tunnel on the highway. If you're driving through a dark tunnel on the highway, you want to go as quickly as possible. If you take your foot off the gas, you're going to kind of coast through, and it's going to take longer.
Yes.
So we want to get through that as quickly as possible. And an EMDR trained clinician is going to be closely assessing what's going on. And so while we're doing that set, so it can last anywhere from 20 to 30 seconds. It varies.
Oh, I see. Okay.
And when we stop that set, check in. What do you notice now? What comes up now? And people may say, well, the image changes, or I feel it more here. I hear the sounds of the car crashing, for example. It usually peaks and then drops off. And I say, okay, let's go with that. And we start a second set of it.
I see.
So a trained EMDR clinician, and I keep emphasizing that is because some people may try to do this and really create some harm. And so if you're my client, I'm closely watching your body language, I'm watching your eyes, I'm watching for all the cues to make sure that you're going in the right direction. And what I see people, sometimes they'll kind of tense up, and we work through that. But when they start to get to the end of that channel that we're working on, I'll see they'll relax a little bit. That you can see the tension just leave their body.
You know, what you're saying is very important, what you just mentioned. Earlier you said something like, you know, don't try this at home.
Right.
You know, because you're giving us a very good description, like I'm like there with you, like in that session, you know? And because of that, I think it is important for people to know that it isn't good to try this at home. Or to
Don't look up the YouTube videos and try to do it yourself.
Exactly. Or even therapists. A therapist that's not trained in EMDR, you know, you're listening to you and you're doing such a great job in describing everything, and someone says, hey, I'm going to try this. What are the downfalls to that? Like, you know, give us some kind of, you know.
So the downfall is if, so what I described, you know, if all goes correctly, you go through the desensitization, and you know, that feeling of I'm going to die, for example, and we take a rating of it, by the way. So before on a scale of 0 to 10, 10 being the most.
Okay.
Once we do some sets, we'll check in. What is, you know, where is it now? We're trying to get it to a 0. So if all goes well and you have a hallelujah session, that disturbance level, that negative belief gets down to a 0, and you start to install or associate more positive beliefs, such as I survived. If you're not trained and something offshoots, you need to know what to do. Because sometimes processing can get blocked. Sometimes other memories may kind of sneak themselves in. So, you know, I use comparison to a weed. You know, if you just you cut off the top, but we're getting to the root. But when you pull out the root of a weed, if there's other weeds around it, those roots are sometimes connected, and it takes other stuff with it. So you need to know what to do if it takes other stuff with it.
That's good, yep.
And to keep your client within, make sure that they're safe, that they feel secure, and that they're within a window of tolerance, that they're not going to be re-traumatized, but they have enough emotional charge to work through the reprocessing.
Yes, very good, Erica. Yeah, so
Thanks,
no, that you described it very well. You know, another one of the phases, body scan. Did you talk about that?
So that's towards the
or did I
the
skip
end.
something?
That's
I'm sorry.
okay. I'll follow you.
You do what you gotta do.
So we have, again, the history taking, we prepare for it, the coping skills, we create a treatment plan, and we do that assessment where we get that snapshot of the memory, the sensations, the negative belief. We're gonna rate the negative belief, how intense does it feel now? Not at the time, but how it feels now.
Okay.
And then once we do several sets of the bilateral stimulation, that's the desensitization phase.
Okay.
We want to get that level of disturbance down to a 0. And that's one of the things that I love about EMDR is that it's an art, but it's very methodical, and it has a built-in fidelity scale. You're always assessing where the client's at, and you can't say that a lot, I think, for other different types of psychotherapy. We kind of just go on how we feel, which is important, but I like data too. So that's actual data you can use. So once you complete the desensitization phase and that negative belief is down to a 0, then we're going to identify what is a positive belief that you would prefer to have. So, I survived, or I'm okay. And then we do more sets around that.
I see.
So I think of it as if you're going, most people have been on a train, right? And you're going from point A to point B. Point A is how you're feeling in the present. I feel like I'm going to die. This is so disturbing. Point B is, it feels more neutral. This happened, it happened to me, I survived, I'm okay now. Every set, in between a set, is like a train stop.
I see.
And when you stop, when you're on the train, you stop at a stop. Some people get on, and some people get off, and then some people get on.
Right.
So between each set, we're like unloading the negative,
Okay.
and we're inviting more positive. So that's where I'll see
Perfect.
people start like this, and then they'll relax by the end. So, so then that goes into installation,
Okay.
that positive, until that feels true for them. And then it goes into a body scan. So like I said, the memories can be, trauma and stress is stored in the body, right?
Yep.
We even say that in our language every day. I have a gut feeling.
Right.
I feel sick to my stomach.
Right,
And the mind and body are so connected. And so that body scan is, I'll have the client do a mental scan of their body and notice if they feel any residual tension or stress or any positive sensation.
Right.
And if there's anything that's lingering, that's tension, we do sets around that and make sure that that's resolved.
Okay. Very good. Very thorough. Let me ask you something. The train analogy is perfect. I like that. I'm thinking about time. I'm thinking about the time that you're in the office. So let's just say that you have, because you see other clients. So let's just say that you have 60 minutes set aside for this particular session.
Right.
Is there ever a time where, at one of those train stops between point A and point B, time is running out?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you do?
Yes, that happens. That happens often, and we talk about that in the beginning, and we have a plan in place for that.
Okay.
So like the hallelujah session is you go through one target. The memory you're working on, we call it target.
Okay.
So you work through one target in 60 minutes. That's pretty rare. It happens, and when you do, we get really excited about it.
Right.
But towards the end, if we know we're running out of time, we find an appropriate place to stop.
Okay.
And going back to that preparation phase, the skills that we use to cope with emotional intensity or distress, we invite some of those in. So I may do a variety of exercises. We do a lot of breathing. We do some guided imagery to kind of close that up and then give some instructions for in between if some new stuff comes up. If anything is particularly disturbing that comes up, that, to contact me. That's pretty rare that happens. I always promise my clients, I'm never going to let you leave here a hot mess.
Right.
That's,
right. No, it's
that's
important.
not going to happen.
Yeah, that's
and
important.
again, that goes back to, to the trust in the relationship. And so finding the appropriate time, sometimes it takes people 5 minutes to end, and sometimes it takes people 15.
I see.
So.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we have the closure, reevaluation. What does that look like?
So closure is just what I described to you. So sometimes it may be you've completed a target. Sometimes it may be you haven't completed a target. And so we want to be able to contain that and compartmentalize it. And compartmentalize, I think of if anybody has a toddler, or if you think, if you have kids or when you're younger, those kiddie plates where they have
Oh, the little compartments.
the
Yeah, little
compartments, like, you know, you
sections.
have a place for your potatoes and your peas and your meat or what have
Right.
you. We don't want it to feel like all the food is mushed together.
Good, yeah.
We want to be able to kind of separate it out,
Right.
put it where it needs to go, contain it, compartmentalize it. So I say, like, let's kitty plate it for now. Like,
Okay.
separate it out, set it aside, and then we'll reevaluate. So that the next session is reevaluation. So that could look like one of two things. One, if we completed the target, we'll check in and say, is it still a 0? And then if it hasn't, we'll come back to it and continue the reprocessing.
So let's say that you have a client in the little bit of time that we have left.
Yeah.
You did a great job here.
Thanks.
We have a client now who they're a woman. She's great. She's been seeing you for several weeks. Things have gone very well. She's had a couple hallelujah sessions.
Right.
Okay. What does maintenance look like? What does she do? Does she still come back to see you? What does that look like?
Right. So so this is how it's a little bit different than traditional therapy. People can be in traditional talk therapy for years. I hear people being in therapy for 8-10 years of their
Right.
life. And so once you've completed your treatment plan, then I'll check in with people and I say, where do you want to go from here? Because you've met the goals. I mean, ultimately, so when they're done, the present symptoms are no longer there.
Okay.
And that they have a plan moving forward and can visualize how they're going to handle that. And then we end. It's the end of
nice.
treatment. So people can be in treatment sometimes just for 3 to 5 sessions.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a little bit more than that. All depends really what the issues are and where
Yes.
they are.
Yes.
Yeah.
Very good. Erica, I just want to thank you.
Thank you for having
thank
me.
you. You gave us a wealth of information in a very limited time span,
Yeah.
and we're done like right on
Yeah.
time. Right on time. I just want to thank you, viewers. Thank you so much for tuning in. We just want to thank Erica Wilcox. Her information has been shown throughout the show. If you have any further questions, if you need some information from her, she EMDR therapists. There are EMDR therapists who take insurance. She's one of them.
Yes.
So just want
Yes.
to put that out there. And you know what? Go out and make it a great week. Focus on your wellness and be well. I'll see you next time.